I'm Andrea Sato from the Wilton Library. I just wanted to say welcome tonight and thanks for coming. I work on adult programs here, and we're pleased to partner again with the Wilton Youth Council on another informative program for parents. This one, how to raise a well-adjusted, confident, and self-reliant child in this crazy mixed-up world, with tonight's speaker, Dr. Alicia Farrell. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jen and she can introduce our speaker. Thanks.
Sorry about that. I'm a very eager Jen Kepner, I guess, and I am with the Wilton Youth Council, and thank you all for being out here tonight. We'd like to thank the library, the Middlebrook PTA, and the high school PTSA for co-sponsoring this event this evening. And I have the honor of introducing Dr. Alicia Farrell. Dr. Farrell is an accomplished cognitive psychologist, former university professor, and founder of Clearview Consulting. For the last 25 years, Dr. Farrell has helped thousands solve their life problems and find peace of mind. Her clients have ranged in age from 13 to 98. She also brings 10 years of corporate experience in marketing and PR to the work that she does. Personally, Alicia is a Navy brat, a mother, and a wife. With an admiral for a father, she grew up traveling the world, moving 12 times in her first 17 years. Alicia knows how to do hard things during difficult times while finding success and peace of mind. She's here tonight to help you do the same as you parent in this crazy mixed-up world.
Thank you, Jen. Did everybody hear me all right? Great. I'm just going to take a breath. One of the things we're going to touch on tonight is stress and anxiety. And right now, I'm feeling a little stressed, right? So normal. I'm so excited that you guys came out tonight. We're going to delve into some really difficult topics, and the agenda tonight is going to be to discuss parenting, and specifically parenting in this day and age and the challenges that you guys are all facing. We're going to have a question and answer period that will follow, and just so everybody is comfortable, please feel free to ask any question that you would like. What we're going to do when we'll edit the video after the fact, so you guys will have your privacy, so don't be concerned about that. I'll go over the handouts that I handed out to you guys later on at the end of the talk. So to start tonight, I just want you to let you know that I've been sitting on my couch working with families and individuals like you for a very long time. I just recently got a new couch too, by the way. And I thought it was going to be this great thing, getting a new couch, and everyone's coming in, they're like, where's the old couch? It's so comfortable. So everyone's adjusting to that. But what's interesting about having been doing this work as long as I have is that I've really been front and center to a lot of transition that's been going on with respect to the culture that we're raising our kids in, the influence of technology on their development, and of course, how difficult and challenging it's become to be a parent in this day and age. So it's we're in a very interesting place, are we not? How many people have preschoolers? Good. Oh, that's so awesome. You get a fresh start. After this, you're going to change everything. How about elementary school kids? Okay, good. Middle school? Middle school is tough, right? There's a lot of people. How about high school? Excellent. Okay, good. Anybody want to just take a second and share why you came tonight? Anybody want to just? Oh, okay, good. I love that. I love when the grandparents come. That's excellent. Anybody else want to share real quick? Yeah. Oh, well, mine's 30, almost 32, and I'm still figuring it out myself. So that's the way that goes. Okay. So here's what's interesting, is that over the course of the last 25 years that I've been doing the work that I do, our culture has shifted So what has happened is that we're valuing performance over character. And we're judging ourselves and others based on what we see and what we hear and what we read on our rectangles. And I call our phones a rectangle because I don't like to give it a whole lot of respect. It's a tool. As a tool, it deserves a lot of respect. As a way of life, it's making us all sick. So we'll talk about that more with the kids in mind. So we really have never known more than we do now about how it is to be healthy. I mean, we can all agree, right? All the research about the fact you got to be mindful and you have to meditate and you have to exercise, you have to eat right and not overwork. And we know all of this, and we've never been in a worse situation than we are right now. So we have the knowledge, but for some reason, we don't seem to be able to apply that knowledge, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of our children, in raising our kids. But you know, really, who's suffering the most is our children. Our children are suffering. I see it. I see it every day. I sit on my couch. I work with families. I work with couples. I work with kids. And the kids are really, really struggling. And we need to do something about it, you guys, because we're at critical mass. Our kids' mental health, you read every day about the statistics related to anxiety and depression and suicide and all this stuff. And the truth of the matter is that those statistics reflect the boots on the ground reality for a lot of these kids. And that reality is not directly related to socioeconomic status, to all these other variables that we might normally take a look at. It is in large part related to the way that we're raising our kids, the way that we're educating our kids, and the way the culture is valuing our children's performance over the development of their character. When you raise a child that has character, you raise a child that knows how to perform. And the reason that that child knows how to perform is because it's coming from their internal motivations, not their external motivations. So it's coming from an internal locus of control, what we call an internal locus of control. And that is a belief system that I have influence over my own life experience. I can change it, I can fix it, I can accept it, I can do all kinds of things. I have choice. When you're operating from an external locus of control, you're doing and you're self-actualizing based on what everybody else wants you to do. That is not sustainable in a healthy fashion, right? So our culture is emphasizing performance and measures of performance as a way of determining how our kids are. Let that sink in for a second. And I know this is a fact because I hear it every single day on my couch. Last week I was working with a 15-year-old boy, and I want to read to you. I wrote in my notes the things that he was saying, and I want to read these to you. I can't get a break from anything. I feel like I'm always being watched, monitored, judged, measured, and compared. I feel like how I perform is more important than how I feel. I'm constantly reminded I need to think about my future. Nothing brings me serenity. I feel like it's not okay not to be okay. When I talk to my parents about not being okay, they get very stressed and scared, and they won't leave me alone. I don't talk to them anymore about how I feel. I'm lonely. All I want is for them to know how I feel, to hear me, and to understand me. That's all. They don't want you to fix everything. They don't want you to be the expert. And they don't want you to lecture to them. They want you to listen. And when they come in and sit on my couch, young, teenage, preteens, teens, young adults, this is what they say. They say, it's okay if you don't agree with me. I understand you're parents. You're not going to agree with everything that I think and everything that I feel. I don't expect that. What I want is I want to be heard and I want to be understood. I'm going to teach you how to do that tonight so that your kids feel heard and understood. Hearing them and understanding them is not letting go of control. Okay? Because you're parents, you're supposed to be in charge. But there's a way to do it so that your kids feel heard and understood. Okay? So my goal tonight is to educate and inspire you to change how you actually think about your role as a parent and ultimately to ponder the point of life. And that sounds very existential. I know it sounds deep. It's meant to, because we continue to solve the wrong problems. We're not solving the right problems. So we've got how many kids now are on 504s, right? We're trying to solve the problem. So we're going to put all these kids on 504s. Everybody needs additional support. Everybody's got anxiety. Everybody's got depression. So let's solve that problem. So let's put them on medication. Let's put them in therapy. Let's convince them that there's something wrong with them. So 504 is like a support. You guys? Yeah. What's that? More medical based. Okay. So the point that I want to make is that the problem that we need to solve is an existential problem. It's based on our belief system. And our belief system right now is that our kids need to perform in order to survive. It's competitive. Boy, they better be writing a book by the time they're 12. They better have a 10-page resume. They better be able to get into one of the top colleges because they're going to be homeless if that doesn't happen. Right? It sounds ridiculous when I say it, doesn't it? But the truth of the matter is, this is where we're coming from. So instead of solving the actual problem, which is to raise our children differently, we're just putting Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid and talking about how these kids are suffering and struggling and what is wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with your kids. I see them every day. They're phenomenal. There's something wrong with us. That's hard. That's hard to hear, but that's the truth. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about the truth, but I'm not afraid to talk about the truth. Because if we don't figure this out, we're going to have generations of individuals who cannot function. And somebody has to take care of me when I'm in the nursing home, and I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this. I'm 62. I mean, I'm coming up on it. Another 20 years, I'm looking at the generation that's going to be taking care of me. I'm like, they're going to just put me on the sidewalk. All right? They're not going to be able to take care of me. That's true. See, that's what I'm saying. Say, oh, to have no expectations. Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know if that's a safe place to be, but I understand. Yeah, especially at night after a tequila. It's like, who cares? Okay, so I am eternally hopeful, and that's why I'm still here talking to you guys after 20 plus years. When I was getting ready to do this talk, I was looking through my notes, and I came across some original statistics. I started doing this talk on the bleeding edge. So nearly 20 years ago, I was standing in front of people talking to them, and they were all like, yeah, whatever. They were just saying, oh, Alicia, really? I mean, aren't you just kind of ringing the bell a little early? I'm saying, no, it's going to be so much easier if we make these changes now. Let me give you some statistics, because here's what everybody is thinking, that this is a new problem that we have, and it's COVID related, right? We all blame COVID. We want to blame COVID. COVID has screwed up a lot for these kids, no doubt about it. But these issues that we're talking about tonight were pre-COVID in a big way, okay? So let me just read to you a few things. I was talking about the perfect storm back then in terms of children's mental health. And here's what we found out in looking at the statistics. So how many people are millennials? Millennials were born 1980 to 2000. How many millennials do we have? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Okay, so my son's a millennial as well. All right, so according to the Pew Research Survey, which was done back around 2011, 2013, millennials thought less of themselves and are more critical of themselves than all generations going back to 1934. So in order to start to understand the true long-term effects of these influences that we're going to talk about tonight again, we must look at how the millennials are faring on college campuses across the United States. 2011, 2013, the American College Health Association survey of nearly 100,000 college students from 153 different campuses in 50 states asked about their mental health over the past 12 months. And this is what the millennials were saying that were in college. 84% felt overwhelmed by all that they had to do. 79% felt exhausted, not from physical activity. 60% felt very sad. 60% of 100,000 college students felt sad. 2013, 57% felt lonely, 51% felt overwhelming anxiety, 46% felt things were hopeless, 38% felt overwhelming anger. And this is continuing, these feelings. And I will just jump in here and say that a lot of the kids that come in, particularly the young adults who are in college or just out of college, are angry at us because they've been sold a bill of goods. They were pushed, and they were measured, and they were compared, and they were told that they had to do this way and that way, and if they did, they were going to have a great life. They were going to get out of college and get a job and buy a house and have kids, and it didn't happen that way. Because that's not true. They did everything we asked them to do, and they graduated from college, and they had a hard time getting jobs. They're having a hard time getting jobs, no matter how well educated they are. They have loads of debt. They can't afford to live on their own and actually finish the growing up process. 31% felt so depressed that it was difficult to function. 8% had seriously considered suicide, which since then has gone up 40% in boys and 30% in girls, the highest it's been in over 40 years. 6.5% intentionally cut or otherwise injured themselves. And this does not include the kids that are abusing alcohol and drugs. So this is what I said back then. Let's use our common sense. We need to make change now, not when we've got 400 peer-reviewed articles that indicate we have a problem, okay? I got so pissed off a couple weeks ago. There was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and this woman wrote an op-ed about how it was ridiculous that we were so concerned about screen time and content with our kids, and we needed to get over it. Say what? Do we need to wait until we have all kinds of research telling us that this is the case? You want to, forsake your children's generation in the interest of waiting for science to tell you something that makes sense? Why are we questioning ourselves around something that makes sense? Right? Okay. So now you guys are all ready to kill yourselves. And and this is how I do it. I get you guys to look at things with your eyes wide open. We're amazing human beings. We can conquer anything. We can change anything. This particular situation that we have with our children is going to require us coming together as communities and making choices and changing things together. Because each individual by themselves making these changes is going to be incredibly difficult. Oftentimes with the parents I speak to, they say, I really want to make these changes, Alicia, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to be judged by my peers. I'm afraid my child is going to be outside the mainstream and they're not going to have friends. They're not going to feel like they fit in. I'm afraid my community is going to judge me and marginalize me. And those fears are not unfounded. It happens in all the communities in Connecticut that I speak with. Certain parents will decide they're going to make some of these changes, and they are marginalized. They're considered like, oh my God, can you believe Mary is doing this? She took, his phone away for good until he's in 8th grade. I can't, we can't even contact. He doesn't have any social media. So he goes to school in the morning and doesn't know what happened overnight because kids are all up doing shit all night long. And Johnny comes in, he doesn't know because he didn't have his phone under his pillow. Can you believe that those parents are doing that to that poor child? I don't know. Who's right in that situation? Okay, so the State of the Union, how we parent in the 21st century, we're parenting desperately. We're parenting in 3 different ways desperately. We're parenting with desperate love. Of course we are. We love our kids. You guys are all here because you're crazy about your kids. I'm over the moon about my son. Of course we are, right? But here's the issue. When we're parenting from a place of desperate love, all we want is for our kids to be safe and secure and happy. Right? Isn't that all we want? This is why we call our love for them desperate. We're desperate for them to be happy and safe and secure so that we are not uncomfortable. Right? Let me say that again so you guys hear the point of that. We are loving desperately in the sense that, and this becomes maladaptive, we are uncomfortable because guess what? 24/7, once you have a kid, you're going to be uncomfortable. And no, it doesn't get a whole lot easier as they become adults and they go out and they start making decisions on their own. And they don't want to hear what you have to say. You thought they would because they weren't listening to you for the first 17 years. And then now they're out and they're adults and they're still not listening to you. Well, maybe you're lucky. They'll hear a little here and there. But the point being that if we're loving them desperately, it's actually more about us than it is about them. Because if we were loving them in an adaptive way, we would let them be separate from us. We would let them struggle because we would know that this is the time to build the character and the grit and the resilience they're going to need under my roof when I can help pick them up and dust them off and protect them and do all this other stuff. Right? But instead, we're loving them desperately. And why are we loving them desperately? Because we're parenting from a place of fear. We're parenting from a place of fear, and that's desperate fear. Fear that our kids won't be successful without our involvement. They can't do it themselves. And failure is not an option. This is that fear, right? So parenting, doing anything from a place of fear, puts you at a disadvantage because you are making decisions based on what is outside of yourself, and you're detaching from what's inside of yourself. Your gut, your common sense, your realization that this is hard and I have to accept this is hard in order to do a good job. Okay, so we're parenting from a place of fear. So instead of preparing kids for life, we're protecting them from life. And you're doing it all because you care. I say this with no disrespect whatsoever, because, I mean, I can't go back in history, but I will tell you, I don't know that there's ever been a more complicated time to raise children. And you guys are all doing the best you can up until tonight. And tonight you're going to do better. You're going to leave here and you're going to do better. All right, and then finally, we're parenting from a place of this was hard to hear. We're parenting from a place of desperate ego. Our kids' success or their failure has become a measure of our own success and self-worth. That is not fair. You want to look good. You want to look like you got a handle on it. You're raising this kid that's just amazing. They're captain of this and they're that and they're straight A's and, they're doing the science fair and they won that. Hey, you're proud. That's cool. Be proud. That's fine. But don't allow that to be your motivator, because that's not healthy. What you're doing is you're being codependent with your child, and I see this all the time. In these desperate ways of parenting, here's what you communicate to your children. That they have to behave and be in a way that makes you okay. They're responsible for how you feel. That is not healthy. That's not going to raise a child who can go out and be independent and self-reliant, make decisions on their own, make mistakes on their own, fail. They're going to continue to use that external motivator wherever they go, whether it's a boss, whether it's a choice in college. They're not going to know how to think for themselves. Okay, so instead of all of that, what we want to do, and what you're going to learn to do tonight, is to parent from a place of courage. Because that's what it's going to take. You're going to do things that don't feel right. And a place of confidence. And your confidence is going to catch up with your courage, is going to help your confidence catch up. All right, you're not going to be confident. All you have to feel is, whatever happens, I can handle it. If I make a mistake, I can handle it. And believe me, I made so many mistakes, my husband and I, because you don't know what you're doing, right? How many people know what they're doing? Anybody know what they're doing? If we're all honest, we're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And we just spent the weekend with our son and his wife down in Charlotte. And there were moments where I was sitting there thinking, I still don't know what I'm doing. Oh my God. You'd have to have 10 kids, and by the time you got to number 10, you wouldn't even know where they were anyway. So all that knowledge is going to go by the wayside. So and the nature of parenting is going to shift and change as the child matures. And so what used to work doesn't work at the next stage. And then you finally figured out, just like, I think I got it. And then the kid changes again. Yeah. So it's okay. We don't know what we're doing, but we still have to do it. Okay, so 3 things not to minimize. The first is that your behavior, you're a model. And you don't want to minimize the influence that you have over your kids. You think they're not paying attention. You think they're not watching you. You think that you're getting away with stuff. They're listening, they're watching, they're hearing everything you do, and they're learning, right? So don't minimize your influence. The second thing is, don't minimize the power of technology and social media on your parenting role with your child. So here's what we're seeing in relation to these devices. We're seeing what we call an age compression with the kids. And what that is we're seeing kids younger and younger acting older and older. And that's because of the content that they're digesting. Okay? So what's happening is those devices are taking over your power and control. They're parenting your children. Who wants to be vulnerable, right? Nobody really enjoys being vulnerable. It's pretty important, but so when your kids are maturing and they've got questions and they have problems and they want advice and maybe they don't have a great connection with you, or maybe they're afraid to come to you, or the vulnerability, where do they go? They go right on these devices. And they get advice from all kinds of people. And those people are parenting your children. And you wonder, well, I don't put pressure on my kids to get straight A's and They're getting pressure on the internet. They're Googling all kinds of stuff and realizing, oh my God, only one person out of 400,000 who apply to Yale get in. I don't have a chance in hell. They're getting all this information, much of which is not age appropriate. And parenting a child who is 10 years old and is acting like they're in adolescence is really hard. Really hard. I was doing a talk several weeks ago, and a parent was very open, and she shared she had this 10-year-old girl, and she said, she's got a smartphone. She found this other young person on the internet who's about her age, between 10 and 12. And this young lady is doing this makeup stuff. Okay? And this little girl, 10 years old, was allowed to interface with this young lady. And of course, this young lady, at whatever she was, let's say she's 12, she's getting sponsored by all the makeup companies. She's making money. And so every day she posts a video about a new technique or how to take care of your skin. This is a 12-year-old, you guys. And this is being digested by a 10-year-old. And then she comes up, this young lady on the internet, she comes up with this great idea. I'm gonna put these kits together with a doll in them, and I'm gonna send them out. You can buy a kit, and then I'll do a video to teach you how to put the makeup on the doll. Okay, so common sense, what do you think? Great idea? Well, this parent's a good parent. She thought, well, gosh, my kid's really interested in this. This is something she really enjoys. I'm going to encourage it and let her do this because maybe she'll become the most famous makeup artist in the whole world. And if that happens, then she'll be okay. So what happens? This young lady has no interest in going to school. And then she won't get out of bed. She says, look, I don't want to do anything else but do this makeup thing. And I don't see why I can't. I go to school, it's boring. What am I doing sitting in history class? I can't wait to get home and have that new kit arrive and do the makeup. And then she starts getting up, 45 minutes early. These kids have to get up so early anyway. And she's getting up so she can do her skincare regime. Is this starting to sound nuts? Like we're living on a different planet? And this mother was beside herself and so concerned for her daughter because, of course, she loves her desperately. And she's got a lot of fear. And she can't get her out of bed. But what was she missing? Courage. Courage for what? Yeah, courage to say no. Exactly. Courage to take charge as a parent. And what was so interesting was that there were, 60 or so parents there, and she was and I was trying to be gentle with her, like making some suggestions. She wasn't getting it. She was like, there's something wrong with her. I don't understand why she won't do it. But she's going on and on. I said, stop. The problem's yours. You're in charge. Take charge. Say no. Shut it down. Take the phone away. Do whatever you have to do. Because this is a weapon for her right now. So this young lady, this 10-year-old, had developed an addiction. And all her behavior indicated she was addicted. She didn't want to do anything else. She was like, there's a kid. Oh God, there's a kid. I gotta get up. I gotta get up and do my skincare regime. Recognize it for what it is, you guys. Okay? So, don't minimize the influence of technology and social media. And finally, don't minimize the influence of your relationship, your connection with your children. The more healthy, the more intimate, the more trust, the more respect in your relationship with your children, the better off everybody's going to be to weather all of this. So if you focus on nothing else, focus on the quality of your relationship. And I'm going to talk about specifically how to do that. Okay. So your power as a parent comes directly out of the quality of the relationship that you have with your children. Your parenting power is not a force. Okay? It's not a force. You're in charge, but it's not a force. It's derived from your willingness to see your child, respect your child, and communicate with your child as an individual separate from you. So your job is when that child is born, you start letting go. You start realizing that that child has things that you cannot change. And you better get to know that child so that you can modify and regulate your parenting over time to help them become themselves. That's your job, not to make them into somebody that you think they need to be in order to be successful, in order to be safe, in order to be happy. Okay? All right. Okay, real quick, there's 3 fundamental life tools that you're going to need in order to do this as a parent. And they're also the tools that you need to teach and model for your kids. The first one is acceptance. And I just want to say acceptance is not giving up. People think acceptance is giving up. Instead, it's distinguishing between what you know about a situation that you're in right now and what you don't know. So what this allows you to do is to adjust expectations. So if, for example, you have a child, temperament is genetic. Let's say you have a child who has a challenging temperament. And let's say as parents, you're both just, chill. Like your temperaments are pretty chill. And then you have this raving maniac. and we know that our kids' temperaments can be very different from ours or very much the same. But that is something that we're going to need to accept. That is not something that we're going to be able to change. Now, does that mean that there aren't things that you can do to adjust your parenting to help that child get to know themselves and learn to regulate so that they can function in the everyday world? Absolutely. Okay? But acceptance is important. It allows you to adjust your expectations accordingly and get in touch with your grit and your resilience. When you learn to accept, you're teaching your children the importance of acceptance. And when they learn to accept, they will in turn find their grit and their resilience. So those are the other 2. Specifically, your grit is your ability and willingness to persevere in the face of adversity. We all kind of know that. When you're really gritty, you accept that there's a lot of suffering in life, and it's normal. And you want to teach your kids that. if you take the suffering out of their lives, when they get out in the world, they are going to have a really hard time. Okay. Resilience is what it sounds like it is. It's bouncing back to your baseline. And there's another form of resilience as well, and that is sustaining your connection while you're going through difficult times. Okay? Connection to self, connection, social connections, loved ones, that type of thing. So those three things are fundamental life tools that you're going to need and that your kids need to learn from you. Okay. So I'm going to read something real quick that puts this all in a bow. And it is Portia Nelson's There's a Hole in My Sidewalk. Has anybody heard it? Oh, good. I love it when no one's heard it. All right, here it is. This is Portia Nelson's autobiography, and it literally will take me less than a minute to read to you. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost and I'm helpless, but it's not my fault. It takes forever for me to find my way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in, and I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down a different street. This is the process of learning. You're going to go through this process as parents. You're going to fall in. You're not going to, take responsibility. You're going to get out. You're going to, and eventually you'll learn to walk around the hole. This is the process you need to allow your children to experience. Can you imagine if you don't let them experience this process in life? And all of a sudden they get out in the world and they fall in a hole of their own making. What is that going to feel like to them? They got a lot of catching up to do, right? So listen to this quote. If from the time you're born, all your options are dictated for you, and all your decisions are made for you, and then you're cast out in the world, it's like a country under colonial rule that falls apart when it gains independence. We don't want that to happen to our kids. We don't want them to suffer unnecessarily. Let me read another quote that is also very powerful. A king who is given his kingdom finds it hard to maintain. A king who builds it finds it easier to maintain. Okay. So hopefully at this point in the talk, what I've been able to do is establish the why behind the changes that you may right now be going over in your head. Like, oh, I could do this different. I could do that different. Because you're going to need to understand what the why is in order to have the courage. So who can just, not that this is a classroom and I'm testing you, I'm not. I'm just curious where we're at. Anybody want to just say, what's the why that is going to lead to the courage that you need to find in the face of all the tsunami of cultural expectations and structure that's making us sick? Why? Why would you want to go up against that? Why would you want to surf that wave? Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, happiness. You want a good outcome for your child. You want to have some joy, right? We're really at a deficit of joy. How many people, when was the last time somebody felt joy? Real joy. Not that that's something you walk around feeling all the time, because you'd have to take drugs in order to do that, and that wouldn't be good, right? But you should expect some joy sometimes. Man, we are spending a lot of time complaining, worrying, getting anxiety, trying to solve the wrong problem. We're not laughing, and we're not experiencing a whole lot of joy. And we're teaching that to our kids. This is not a laughing matter. You get down, you just start studying for that chemistry exam. Come on. I don't care how you feel right now. Now, is that message appropriate sometimes? Sure, yeah. But do you want that belief system that you're coming from all the time? No, you don't. So what we need to do is we need to look ahead at the desired outcome. We're so busy looking right in front of us at our navel. We need to ask ourselves, oh, you know what? What are these little munchkins going to need to be able to do when they turn 18 and they go out in the world? Because you could start asking yourself that question when you've got a child in utero. I highly recommend you do, because the detachment process happens while that child is still growing inside of you, because there's a lot about that kid that you have no control over. You got to let go of. Okay? So you think ahead, you're like, oh, okay, now what do they really need to be able to do by the time they're 18 and they're going to go out in the world? And here's some suggestions. They need some basic life skills. We're so focused on performance that sometimes these kids are 18 years old, they're going to college, and they can't do a load of laundry. How does that feel when you're all of a sudden on college campus and you don't know how to do a load of laundry? They can't make themselves a grilled cheese sandwich. Well, eating and washing your clothes is relatively important to survival. Solving problems and making decisions for themselves. Learning how to think. And when you parent in a collaborative way, you teach your children how to think. And they're learning how to think at school as well. A strong work ethic. All right, so now everyone's going to buy, oh yeah, definitely. You got to raise a kid who's just a worker. Well, that isn't quite what I mean. Because your children, by 18, it's like a blip. They're hardly who they're going to be when they're adults, real adults. So here's what you're looking for. You're looking for really small behaviors that indicate that they know what it is to work hard. So let's say, especially the boys, because here's the deal with the boys. All right, I raised a boy. I'm married to a boy. I mean, he's almost 70, but he's still a boy. All guys know. We know it's all right. But so what was I talking about? That totally threw me off. Oh yeah, the work ethic. So here's the thing with a lot of boys. They are not going to necessarily apply themselves unless something is interesting to them. It's just kind of how they're made. And so, for maybe some time, because a lot of their lives are in an academic environment, and I'm generalizing for clarity, of course, but a lot of guys don't like sitting in a classroom and hearing the wah, wah, wah. And so you're not going to see them, and you're shaking them. You're like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you? Your sister, she's got everything organized in her backpack and all this stuff. And the guys, you're going their backpack, and it's like, well, I don't know what happened to my homework. It's in there somewhere. All right? So, but here, you're going to challenge your child, your young man. You're going to challenge him. You're going to have expectations of him, and you're going to look for really small increments of change and engagement. So, if that young man, when he has something he's interested in, is engaged and connected and is up until 1 a.m. reading about something or talking about something or thinking about something, okay, they're learning the importance of work. I remember having a conversation with my son in high school, and he was no different than most young men. And I'm an academic. I love a textbook, I sniff it. My husband just looks at me like I'm nuts. So, and my son was a decent student. He was fine. And we did not raise our son. We raised our son the way that I'm describing to you, okay? We did not get caught up in all the stuff. So, of course, we still needed to push him a little and encourage him and have expectations of him. And at one point, I was, just spending way too much time looking at his grades, and I was getting all anxious. And finally, I told him his sophomore year in high school, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. It's your deal. It's your life. These are the consequences. You figure it out. And of course, that didn't work out very well for him. But actually, it didn't work out well for me, but it worked out really well for him because, yeah, I let go of the reins and he didn't know how to grab them. And so there was quite a bit of mess going on that next quarter. And when he came to me and his grades were okay, but they weren't great. And I said to him, dude, you'll figure it out. I'm here to help. What do you want from yourself? Because it doesn't matter what I want at this point. In 2 years, you're out of the house. I've done my job. I'm here now to mentor you and support you. And he was like, what? He said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm just saying, when it's important to you, you'll learn that you have to work hard at it. And when you work hard at something, it feels good. And I'm not going to put chains on you and put you outside to pick up every leaf by your hand in order to teach you that hard work feels good when it's meaningful to you. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to figure that out for yourself. Okay, so here is how you do it. First, if your child doesn't know how to do something, or they're not developmentally ready to do it for themselves, you're going to do it for them. And at any point in their development, you're going to need to decide, what is Junior capable of? And if he's not or she's not capable of something, of course, as a parent, you're going to do it for them. It's not you're going to have 6-month-old tie your shoe, No, you're not going to do that. That's ridiculous. So when a child starts to become developmentally ready or temperamentally ready to take on a challenge, you're going to actually do whatever that is with them. So if it's tying their shoes, you're going to sit down with them and you're going to show them, this is how you tie your shoes. You're not going to put any pressure on them. Just going to say, yeah, this is how you do it. You want to try? Just try. It's okay. I'll tie it up for you if you can't do it. And you get them to address the vulnerability, right? It's all right. It's okay. Nobody's perfect. Just give it a shot. So that's the second step. The third step is then you watch them do it. All right? So you do it for them. Then you do it with them. Then you sit and watch them do it. And then you'll let them do it themselves. And in general, your belief system needs to be, if your child can do something for themselves, don't do it for them. So if you're looking for a really good place to throw the dart and get started, a good place to start is, what am I doing for my child right now that they could do for themselves? And then slowly, you're going to teach them. You're going to go through this process with them. And even though you know they can do it, don't just jump right in and say, hey, dude, I'm all done. I'm not doing this anymore. No, go through the process with them. And then once they've mastered it, you give them the credit for that. And then the expectation is that they do it themselves. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't tie your kids' shoes for them if they, we're not being ridiculous, right? None of this is black and white. Okay. Let me see how we're doing here. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the things that you can do to build a quality relationship with your children. And the first most important thing is structure. So kids need to grow up in a structure. And what that means is a structure where there are expectations that are predictable. There are, family ways of doing things. There's a bedtime, right? So you're not going to create a prison. When you parent from an authoritarian perspective, and that's a way of parenting, you're going to parent in a militaristic way. You're going to say, okay, this is it. This is how we do it. You're going to do it my way or the highway. If you don't do it, you're going to get punished. And that's the way that goes. Now, that's not a great way to parent all the time. Of course, sometimes you're going to have to be the authority like that and step in. But in general, you don't want to have a consistently authoritarian way of parenting. Why is that? Because it takes the agency away from the child, and it creates a lot of shame. And that child, that breaks down the quality of your relationship. And when you break down the quality of your relationship, your child's going to stop coming to you. That child, if they make a mistake, they're not coming to you if you're an authoritarian parent. They're just not going to do it. Because can you imagine? You come to an authoritarian parent, you say, hey, I made a really big mistake on Instagram and I need your help. And that authoritarian parent's going to be, what's wrong with you? I taught you, how many times do I have to tell you not to say stupid stuff like that? And here the child has come to you and opened up to you, and now you're shaming them. Okay? So that is not a healthy structure. A very permissive structure where it's kind of like a free-for-all, and it's all about what the kid wants when they want it, and your job is to step and fetch it. That's not healthy. Those kids actually have much lower self-esteem, believe it or not. So I don't know if you guys are following these articles about gentle parenting. And there's a lot of misconception about, there's some good things about this concept of gentle parenting. I do not like the name of that, because what that suggests is that you got to be afraid you're going to hurt your kids. You got to be like tiptoeing around. You be so careful how you say everything and how you do everything, and heaven forbid you cause your child to cry or you cause your child to feel some pain or suffering. Better they feel it from you because they know you love them, and you can circle back around and apologize, which is like a superpower, by the way, as a parent. If you screw up, just go to your kid and apologize, and they'll light right up. They'll be like, yeah, you really screwed that one, didn't you? Yeah, I like that. This feels much better to me, right? They like that moment where they feel like you were the one who made the mistake. Okay, so all children's behavior and feelings occur within a structure, and it's what allows these kids to feel safe. You want to contribute to your child feeling safe, create a healthy structure, and that structure is made up of rules, expectations, positive discipline, collaboration, and communication. It's also flexible, okay? It can expand, it can contract, and it can change based on the child's, what's developmentally appropriate for the child. So remember that in a healthy structure, the role of the parent or the teacher, the administrator, the coach is not up for grabs, okay? You do not give up your authority. It's how you communicate it and collaborate with your child around it. So what you want to do with your authority is to create what we call a positive feedback loop for your kids. And we all need a positive feedback loop, by the way. So if you don't have one, work on that for yourself as well. So this is what a positive feedback loop does. It promotes positive behavior that supports better choices and mitigates the risks. So one of the contexts that I talk about this in is when I'm talking about addiction and experimentation. One of the ways that you can help to prevent your children from overdoing their experimentation and becoming addicted to something is to ensure that they have a well-established positive feedback loop in their life, which means they have things that they enjoy and they have healthy relationships in their life that feed them, okay? So doing things we enjoy and are good for us leads to feelings of happiness, joy, love, contentment, which leads to wanting to do more things that are good for us. So that's where it becomes protective, Because then if they're faced with the decision to do something that maybe isn't going to feel so great in the long run, they'll make the decision not to do that in the moment, right? You don't have control, but this is a way to set the stage, and you can start this positive feedback loop from the time the child is born. So these positive emotions help us develop our physical, psychological, and social resources, which lead to more positive emotions. It's called building a life that speaks to you. It's called, like my dad would say, run your own race. He used to say to me all the time, run your own race, Alicia. Don't run anyone else's race. What's the point? Think for yourself and run your own race. You guys start thinking for yourselves and running your own races within your homes and with your own children. Yeah, so this is a good question. So what's the source of the feedback in the feedback loop? Ideally, the source of the feedback is going to be intrinsic in the activity, right? So this is such a good question because it brings up something very important, and that is the fact that we praise our kids. And we think that that is part of the positive feedback loop, to praise our children. So here's what happens when we praise our kids on a regular basis. They actually hear that as shame. Because what they hear when you praise them all the time, instead of giving them thoughtful feedback about the choice they made or the behavior they're engaged in, what they hear you say is, you're a good boy. And then when you don't behave well, they hear you say, you are not a good boy. Whether you're saying it directly to them that way or not. So you want to help your child establish activities and relationships in their lives that feel good, that they're connected to. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you are all very athletic, all right, in your family, and everybody plays soccer. That's like the thing. Everybody going back several generations, like, we're soccer players. The Smiths, they're soccer players, definitely. And you have a child, and you're like, here's another soccer player. Yay! And now you've already, before the kid can even walk, you have an expectation they're going to be a soccer player. So let's say now the kid's 5, 6 years old, and you've got him on a soccer team, and let's say it's a travel team, 5, 6 years old. I know, I'm kind of exaggerating for clarity, but it sort of happens that way, right? So now you got them on this travel soccer team, and they're 6 years old, and they're miserable. And they're crying, and they don't want to go, and they're saying, I don't like this, I don't enjoy soccer. And you're saying, I'm sorry, dude, but you're playing soccer. Like, the Smiths are a soccer family. This is what we do. Well, that is not contributing to that child's positive feedback loop. Now, does that mean you can only, your job is to allow your children to only do what they want to do? No, that's not what I'm saying. You may still have an expectation that, well, you know what, honey? We're going to finish the season because you have a responsibility to your team, and then we'll make a decision together. We'll take a look at it and see what we think. But if you don't play soccer, you'll need to choose something else to do. And we can come up with things that you can do. But you're not going to be home on playing video games. So if you're thinking you're not going to play soccer because you want to be home, I just want to let you know that's not the case. That's the kind of thing that you would end up saying. So positive feedback loop, put some effort into that. And that's fun, by the way. It's fun to do. Okay. So structure. Unconditional support and caring. And this is what we're talking about. Minimize the use of punishment and shame. This broke my heart. I had this young lady on my couch last week, and she's 11. And the bottom line is, she was in with her dad, and she expressed herself. She said, you know what? All you guys do is tell me what I do wrong. You never tell me if I've done something right. And her father started to cry. He started to cry because he grew up like that. And to hear his daughter say that to him, and she looked at him, she goes, "What are you crying about?" And he said, "I just didn't realize that we weren't telling you what you were doing well. And instead, we were just telling you what you weren't doing well." And this creates a culture of perfectionism within the household. Because now the child feels like if I don't, like everything's got to be in my hamper and my room's got to be clean and I got this and I got school all day and this is how she was feeling. And you know what she was doing? She was picking holes in her leg. Picking holes in her leg. Because she felt like she wasn't worthy. And when we hit the nail on the head, she started crying. Because I can't take it anymore. I can't handle it all. I got to go to school. I got 2 hours of homework. I got this, I got that. And then I come home and then you're telling me that I got to go pick up my wet towel and I got to make sure this is done and I got to do the dishes and and the parents are fabulous parents. Fabulous. And they adore their children and they just want their kids to be raised properly, but it's become maladaptive, right? So unconditional support and caring is making sure that you tell your kids more about what they're doing well than what they're not doing well. Okay? You want to use encouragement as well instead of praise because it actually reinforces the effort. You don't necessarily want to reinforce the outcome. You want to reinforce the effort because the outcome is unpredictable. It's uncertain in most cases. With most things in life, you can do all the right things and the outcome can still not be great. So you want to reinforce the effort. Okay, I'll give you an example of that. Let's say that you had a long day at work and you get home and you say to your child, "Hey, could you do me a big favor and set the table?" And they set the table for you. And then you turn around and you're like, "Oh, wow, you know what? You are an amazing table setter. Like, I don't know if I've ever known someone who could set a table like that. Like, that is really amazing, that table setting you're doing." Now, the kid is hearing, "Holy moly. I mean, that means that every time I set a table, I got to do it well. And if I don't, then I'm not a good table setter." That's reinforcing the outcome. Now, here's what it sounds like if you reinforce the effort. You turn around and you say, "Oh, you know what? I had the hardest day today. And the fact that you just set that table for me, I can't tell you how much easier my night's going to be." That's reinforcing the effort. So what does that kid hear? That kid hears, "Oh my God, I'm valuable in somebody else's life. I can make a difference." And so what happens potentially the next time you come home and you're tired and you're ragged out and that same child sees you like that? What might they do? They might set the table without you even asking. Why? Because it's coming from inside, not outside. You reinforce something inside of them. So now they have that. And now you turn around and you see the table set and you say to them, "Did you notice I had a hard day at work?" And the kid said, "Yeah, you look really tired tonight. So I thought I'd set the table for you." And you say, "Thank you so much. I appreciate that more than you know." feel like this, right? That's the difference. That's how you can build a quality relationship as well, because then the child starts to trust your reactions. They know that you're seeing them, that you're hearing them, that you're understanding them. And so, how do you reinforce that? The kid comes home and they look tired, and you say, "Sweetheart, you look really tired tonight. Can I do the dishes for you tonight?" Now we're terrified, right, as parents, like one night, do the dishes, and that's it. Now I'm going to have to fight back, get them to do the dishes. Give it a try. Tell the child why you're doing the dishes for them. Say, "You know what, you look really tired. Why don't you just chill? I'll do the dishes for you tonight." How are they going to feel? Seen and heard and understood. Quality relationship, trust, respect. Okay? Okay. A few other quick things, and then we're going to talk briefly about the brain. Okay. Listening and validating your children's feelings. Bless you. Don't assume that you know how your kids feel. Listen. Ask them questions. Not too many. Right? So, ask them questions and then just listen. Even if you don't agree with the situation, even if you don't agree with their feelings, let them know that you heard them. Say, "Wow, that sounds like it really upset you, honey." Even though in your head you're like, "Are you kidding me? How many times is this going to happen on Instagram?" You just say, "Oh, you know what? That must be really, really hard to walk into school after what happened." Okay. Try not to judge. What's that? Oh yeah, right. So that's not giving too many advices, which is really important as well. They don't want you to be the one who knows. They want you to be the one that helps them understand. So parents feel like if they tell their kids, "Hey, if you do this, then this is going to happen," and that, and they go into all kinds of detail, that somehow that's going to prevent the child. And you got to, educate your children. You got to go down that road. That's fine. But it's going to be far more powerful if you're able to have a collaborative conversation about it. What do you think would happen? Or what do you think about, let's say your best friend Johnny has a drink and gets in the car and drives. What are your thoughts on that? Instead of, "Don't you ever. And if you do, I swear to God." Yeah, which is very tempting. We're not teaching our kids anything. Get them to think for themselves. Tell a story about yourself. Ask for their advice. This is clever. This is a very clever parenting tool. So let's say your kid's having some anxiety and some difficulty at school with a class or something like that, and you had a difficult situation at work. Come home and ask your kid for advice. Say, "You know what? I'd be curious what you might have to say about this situation." And, make sure, of course, it's age appropriate. You share it with them. You're showing your vulnerability, right? And you say, what would you do in this situation? And the boy's going to say, "Oh, no. I don't even know what you just said." And the girl's going to be like, "Well, I would do this and this and this." But so understand the differences there. But anyway, you're just going to stay in the dialogue. And if they do happen to offer something, even if it's ridiculous, say, "That's interesting. You know what? I'll let you know how it turns out." And then you let them know after the fact. You're like, "Yeah, you know what? I decided not to say anything. I got into work yesterday, and it just seemed like everything passed." And the kid's like, "Oh, well, good for you. I'm glad you're feeling better." Teaching so much. And you're creating that trusting connection and relationship. Okay, we're going to jump ahead. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. Okay, having faith in your kids. They're born to have grit and resilience. Am I okay if I take 5 minutes? And then will we have time for question and answer? Is that okay? Is that okay with everybody? Okay. All right. All right, what I want you to do for this section of the talk is I want you to think about your children as a brain. That's it, just a brain on a stick, okay? Brain on a stick. That's how I want you to think about your kids. Because that's basically what they are. That's what we all are. And without our brains, we're, you take the brain off the stick and we're just a stick. We can't do anything, okay? So that's why we're talking about a little bit about brain development so that you guys have a perspective on what's actually going on. The kids love this stuff, by the way. I have found one of the most powerful ways to have a conversation with a child about drugs and alcohol is to talk about their brains. They're like, oh, really? You could do that or this? They just love talking about their brains. So don't be afraid to do that. So there's plenty of scientific research now demonstrating that early human brain development changes in response to experience. Right? Brain development is the structure of the brain, the physical structure, development of that, and the functional aspects of the brain. So think about the importance of having made that connection in the research. What we do with our brains has an influence on how they ultimately end up being. Now, I learned this in graduate school, and of course, I had my son when I was in graduate school, and I nearly drove him nuts as an infant. I was taking him to the pediatrician, and he's crying all the time. She goes, well, what are you doing? Oh, I'm stimulating him all the time because there's not going to be one brain cell that doesn't survive. I'm making sure that those brain cells are working hard. Well, I was completely freaking the poor thing out because the truth of the matter is that as important as it is to stimulate those brain cells so they form connections, right? There's going to be and there needs to be what we call pruning, which is a dying off of brain cells because we don't want too many. Too many is not good. So here's what happens in utero right before that baby gets born. There's this massive proliferation of brain cells. It's getting ready. It's like, I'm coming out. The brain's like, I got to get ready because I need more than I'm going to need in order to get out there and start interacting with the world. Then the child's born, and the moment that child's born, those brain cells start to prune. They start to die off based on the value, the quality, the degree of stimulation that's going on in the brain. So you can imagine, fast forward between birth and pre-adolescence, there's another period of proliferation. So right before adolescence, the brain is like, again, producing brain cells. Oh, lots of brain cells. So that, because this is the last time, all right, that there's going to be that kind of proliferation. And then you hit adolescence and things start to prune again. And then the brain starts to solidify. Now, we also know that there's plenty of plasticity involved throughout our lives, so it's very cool that we can grow new brain cells and recover brain cells as well. So that's hopeful. But the point is that once that physical structure in the brain solidifies, it's very difficult to change that. Functionally, you can change. Physically, not so much. So I'll give you an example. These kids that are playing a lot of video games, like hours and hours of video games, what's happening is that their amygdala, which is the emotional center of their brain, is getting larger. That is not going to shrink back down. Now, what does that mean? If that amygdala is getting larger, and if you take a kid who's playing video games and you stick them in a PET scan, you look at what the brain is doing, the prefrontal cortex, which is all the logical center of the brain, is powering down, and the emotional center in the midbrain is powering up. Well, whatever you're doing with the brain, okay, it's going to develop more than the other parts. So what we find with these kids is that a lot of times they have difficulty regulating emotion because the amygdala is actually larger than it would normally be. I give that to you as an example of the influence of what your kids are doing on the development of their brain. The same is true with this, screen time. Okay? And there's lots of evidence for this. That, and it doesn't mean that it's all negative, but a lot of people throw out things, well, you know, the military, they like to get the kids who've been gaming so much because their vision, their eyes, their ability to see differently than like a pilot would see actually goes up. I'm like, great if you got a pilot, but the biggest cortex, the biggest part of your brain is the visual cortex. So if you're using that visual cortex and you're interacting with those fast-moving objects and you're doing all, your visual cortex is going to be different than someone else's that isn't. So yeah, does the military look for people that did a lot of gaming? Well, sure, because they're a lot easier to train. I mean, if that's what, you know, sounds good to you, great. Then sit your kid down and let's do it that way. Okay. So the importance of all of this is that what your kids are doing with their brains matters. And if you have a child who is learning to play an instrument and who has a beautiful structure at home and a trusting and healthy connection with their parent, and they have friends and they have interests, that is a different brain than a child who is growing up detached from their family environment with little structure, doing whatever they want to do and probably doing too much of it because that's normal and natural for children to do. The reward center in your child's brain, particularly in pre-adolescence and adolescence, is superpower. So when they do something that feels good, they get this huge rush of dopamine. And all they want is more of that. All right? Think back. You guys all know what that feels like, right? For some of us, those days are long gone. But the point being that, yeah. So, yes. Yes. So the question is that what creates addiction? And the answer to that question is yes. Everything about our devices is built to interact with that reward system. Now, there's a huge difference with us. We're addicted too, but there's a huge difference in our ability to regulate around something like that versus kids, because the kids' reward system is so reactive. So what we're doing is we're developing addicts at very, you can see these infants. Oh, I can't tell you how this drives me crazy. Parents at the grocery store, 6 months old, sitting there with the phone, and what is that kid doing? Are they looking around? Are you talking to them? No, they're like this. It takes a monkey to figure out how to work these things, by the way. Because I get parents who say, well, Alicia, you know, if we don't expose our kids to this stuff early enough, they're going to be at a disadvantage. Horseshit. They can learn in 20 minutes what they need to know to learn more. It's ridiculous. The point is, yeah. Well, so this is excellent. What this gentleman is saying is that what about when you read? Because if you really love to read, you get yeah, absolutely. But here's the difference. The difference is that one activity with your rectangle, everything you do on your rectangle is passive. When you're reading, you have to actively engage. That's why some people choose to listen to books on tape rather than read, because reading is a lot more resource intensive. That is part of the problem with our kids' development with these devices, is that they're learning that what they're doing is active. It's not. It's passive. They're not learning to be active. Their brains are not learning to be active in this way. So then once they're faced with having to do something that's active, they're like, forget it. That is way too hard when I can just pull it up right here and, whatever. What are you talking about? I got to date face to face? Are you out of your mind, Alicia? I got to make a phone call? Why don't I just text? Why don't I have these kids who are having relationships. Like, oh, yeah, I got a boyfriend. Oh, that's wonderful. Tell me what's going on. Have you been out on a date? No, I've never seen him before. Honestly, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal just recently that kids are foregoing sex. Like they're not having sex because it's too much. It's too active. I mean, honestly, that's a rite of passage. At some point. Yeah. Yeah, this is a great question because we're in this culture, right? And the kids are getting tablets from the school. So here's what some parents are doing. Because when they're in school with their tablets, they don't have free reign. But when they come home and they have Wi-Fi, they can do anything they want on those tablets. So what parents are doing is they're creating a separate Wi-Fi for the tablet, and they shut it down. So that kid can only do homework on that tablet, supervised, and otherwise they turn that Wi-Fi off. It's crazy. It's crazy what we're faced with. I mean, parents are taking these devices and locking them up at night because the kids are getting up in the middle of the night and scurrying around the house and finding them, and then, we really have our hands full. So in your handout, you'll see that I have a guide. I don't really like calling it a contract. It's more like a family agreement that you're going to negotiate with your child. And if you're too far down the road, you're not too far down the road. I just want you to know. Please, no, you're not too far down the road. Never too far down the road to make changes. Just make sure that the changes that you're making are just small and incremental and that you're collaborating and there's a guide in there for the conversation you want to have with your kids. Okay? Okay, other questions? We're going to stop there. Other questions? So the question is, how do you get rid of the mind block when your kids are saying, I got this? Give me an example. Like something, you can make something up or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, for example, you have a teen and you're asking for help and they're a teen. They should really know at this point in time that they pitch in, they know how to set the table, but they're pushing against you. Okay, so here's the truth. The truth is that that's their job. And the way that we process that experience is really important. Because if we process it like they should know at this point, well, you got to look at the developmental stage that they're in. They're pulling away from you. They're pushing against you being the authority. You asking them to set the table, they may choose to use that as a way against you in a sense. Because really the only thing that our kids have power over us with is emotion. That's about it. And they try to control us. Little shits, they try to control us. And they're really good at it. All right? They're really good at it. So if you have to continue to make decisions. How important is this? If this is important to you and you need that child to follow through, then you're going to need to establish a consequence if they don't. And when you establish consequences, you're going to do so proactively, which means you don't do it after the fact and say, okay, that's it, give me your phone, I've had it. Because they goes, that's not fair, you didn't tell me, and they have a point. So you're going to wait until the next day and you're going to sit down and say, hey, here's the deal. Setting the table is your responsibility, and I'm tired of asking you and getting into arguments with you about this. So you're either going to set the table or this is going to happen. Now, if in figuring this out you realize, oh my God, I'm setting a consequence for not setting the table. I mean, Jesus, maybe that's just not important or too much right now. And, maybe I'll give them 2 days a week they could do it instead of, you're going to start to feel something come up. And if it starts to feel ridiculous that you got a consequence, because here's what happens oftentimes, and we got a consequence for this, and we got a consequence for that. And then, and the kids are like, oh my God, I got a consequence for everything. And then they start feeling like they've got to be perfect, right? So these are difficult parenting decisions, as simple as what you laid out is. So you need to decide. And if you want to give your kid a choice, you could say, look, here's the deal. Maybe, you're going to do one or two things. You can set the table or you can clean the dishes. You decide. So anytime you have that resistance coming up, particularly with a teenager, give them a choice. And say, the choice is not up for grabs. But you have a choice. So make the choice. Okay? Other questions?
The parent being upset because you told him already you don't have to post something negative online or aggressive. How would you react, or how should we react? Because I would have said what you put in the negative example, right? Like, I told you why you did it, like, give me your phone, delete the post. So what
Yeah.
would be a better way to approach that situation?
Okay, so the question is, how would you approach a situation where you have a child who continues to post, let's just say, inappropriate comments or difficult comments, mean, whatever. So here's what you would do. First of all, this isn't going to be one conversation. It's going to be a series of conversations over time that you're going to need to have. You're going to have to repeat yourself, okay, over and over again, because that's the way. Remember the hole in the sidewalk. That's how kids learn. So here's how you start a conversation like that. You say to your child, so here's the deal. This family that you're in, part of the structure of this family is our values. And one of our values is kindness. And you are breaking a value when you post online these comments. And that's not okay in this family. So you have a choice. You can continue to post these things and violate our family values, and there'll be consequences for that. Or you could decide that it feels better to be kind and try that out. And if you need my help with that, I'm more than happy to be there for you. Let's talk about the consequence of you not adhering to our family value. And then you ask the child, because it's collaborative. You say to them, what do you think the consequence should be if you post something that's unkind? And you follow the conversation with them. And I'll tell you what often happens. The kids come up with consequences that are way more than you would ever. They're like, well, I think you should ground me for the rest of my life, and just shove my meals under the door, and I'm a terrible person if I. And so it's a great opportunity for you, if that happens. You could say, oh, wow, that's kind of severe. Let's kind of take a step by step. I have some ideas. You offer some ideas, and let's decide what that consequence is going to be. Okay? Now you've set the stage for the conversation later on. So let's say that your child you hear word that your child is having difficulty in one of their relationships, which is maybe some time that they might post something that isn't particularly kind. What you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, remember our family value? I hear you're having trouble with Mary. Remember our family value. You're not going to go on a public forum and post something that's not kind. Remember what the consequence was that you chose. And the kid's like, whatever. No, I don't remember. And so then you tell them, you remind them. Say, if you post something that's not kind, please recognize that you're choosing that consequence. So when you parent like that, you're taking yourself out of the place of being the authority, the one who's going to met out the punishment, right? Okay, that's it. I told you, and this is it, and now you're this. Instead, if the kid does it, you just say, I'm really frustrated with you. You're not learning this. And I'm really kind of sad because now I got to take your phone away and I know how important that is to you. And the kid's like, what? So, well, this was the consequence. Well, you can't, what do you do? You're going to take the phone away? I said, no, I'm not taking your phone away. You chose the consequence. So now your phone comes to me. So what are you teaching that child? There's consequences and you're responsible for choosing them. You see how beautiful that is? And that takes you out of the fight. There's no fight. It's like, I'm not going to fight with you on this. You chose to have your phone taken away. We talked about the consequence. We came up with it together. And now you violated our agreement. I don't know what to tell you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That's phenomenal. I appreciate everything this evening. On behalf of Wilton Youth Council, I do want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the Middlebrook PTA, the high school PTSA, and obviously the library for hosting us tonight. But I do want to also be considerate of time because the library does close at 8. So.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.